Good evening, all of you. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here again physically and to be able to take part to your conference without attending it directly, but to be a participant to this very important conference. And I want first of all to congratulate the organizers, the McCain Institute, the George W. Bush Institute, and the PRC Institute of Georgia. Madam Ambassador, Mr. Ambassador, it is a great pleasure to welcome you here and to welcome all the participants that are coming from different parts of Europe and the United States. I think it's very important that this conference devoted to Ukraine takes place here in Georgia. This is only underlining a fact that we all know too well, that Ukraine's and Georgia's fate are very linked. We are linked by our history, which we maybe have not chosen, but we have gone through the same episodes over the past 2 centuries. We have gone from being within the Russian Empire, without that being a choice of our nations, to the first independence that was for both our countries short-lived, to again being incorporated by force into the Soviet Union, and having to go through this very difficult period of repressions that took different forms in Ukraine and in Georgia, but basically it was the same thing. It was suppressing human rights, suppressing the right of having its national identity, trying to suppress the language, and we all see that it doesn't work in the end. And that has forged even closer links between our 2 countries. And of course, when the second independence came in 1991, then again our countries started on the same path towards European integration, towards democracy, towards consolidating independence, consolidating institutions, a very difficult path, because the Soviet past is not one that you get rid of that easily. And it's something that you think that you might have gotten rid of, and that suddenly comes back again surreptitiously, like it is when I think today when we adopt laws that are extending in some ways the hearing systems, the listening devices. That is not the European direction. That is some recurrence of the old past when we think that it can improve the way we govern. It doesn't improve the way we govern in the end, and that's something that then we find out sometimes maybe too late. So that's these experiences have forged very strong links on top of what have been links between our people. And those links are very strong. And on those links is founded this strong solidarity that we see today in these very difficult times for your country, that the Georgian population has manifested, will manifest, and it's something that will continue. It is important because at this stage of the history of our countries, it is clear that Ukraine, with this fight, with this very courageous and determined fight against the Russian aggression, has opened a new page of history. This is really a game changer. Maybe not everybody can see it yet, is ready to realize what is a new reality, but this reality is completely different. And there is a paradox, maybe, that 25th February 1921 marked the first invasion by Russia of Georgia of the new period. I'm not counting the old times. And the 24th of February 2022 marks the end of that century of occupation. It marks really the end of that Soviet Union, even if today's Russia does not yet maybe realize it, and even if maybe some parts of the world do not realize it. In fact, the fight of the Ukrainian people has already modified completely the geopolitical world in which we are living. Russia is no longer invincible. Whatever can be the pretension to invincibility, that's finished. And a smaller but much more determined nation has shown to the world that you can resist, that you do not accept the occupation, you do not accept the invasion of your territory. And this resistance has shown that it can overcome much stronger, much bigger, much well-equipped, or so we thought. Maybe it's not that true either. Russia has to discover that it cannot oppose NATO enlargement. Not only that it cannot oppose, but in fact, it's fueling NATO enlargement. And what we are seeing with Sweden and Finland is probably something that many of us here, even if we are specialists of the strategy, we had not expected in the previous years. It cannot oppose EU enlargement, has accelerated and galvanized the prospects for EU enlargement in a way that also could not have been expected, and has made the reticence or the opposition of some of the EU member states impossible. And that is a process that will continue. Russia has even succeeded into making Central Asian states much more self-assertive and less ready to compose and to accept everything from Russia. And it has certainly reinforced what existed before, but has made it more clear, the central pivotal role, I would say, of transit of this region because of Russia's today's isolation. And this isolation, economic isolation, is certainly something that will continue, and it's not something for one day or two, even if maybe because of the previous periods, Russia might think that, like for Georgia or like for Crimea, these things will come back to normal very soon. That's not true anymore, and that is very clear when we listen to especially the European institution leaders in their determination, but also the member states themselves. So the most important thing for us to do is to take stock of these changes and to realize for ourselves, and I'm talking, of course, for Georgia, and to see that what is most important in these changing times is unity and solidarity of those that share the same values. And this is what we have seen, that we are seeing now stronger links between the Europeans themselves, stronger links between the Europeans and the United States. And of course, we have to know our friends, those that have supported our path from the very beginning, those that have helped us to create the reforms on which we are now continuing, those that have helped to develop the institutions that we are now basing ourselves upon. Of course, Russia will try to counter this reality. That's a very old phenomenon, a very Soviet phenomenon, to present what is black as white and white as black, fake reality and disinformation. And we see that very clearly. We are seeing attempts to convince us and to spread different news rumors, or even declarations, so that Ukraine and Georgia maybe are not that friendly towards each other. Creating distrust is one of the favorite ways in which Russia is acting. And another one is that the US is not a supporter of Georgian peace, democracy, security, helping us to bring up our defenses, but the US is pushing us to war. So that is an incredible manipulation and disinformation. I'm not saying that it's not repeated by some Georgians. That's how the disinformation works, when there are some relays that can be used. And that, of course, is very destructive. And I've been saying, and I think that all of us should be very clear, and it's more to us to say than to you to defend yourself. You don't have to defend you, because it's very incredible in this day and age that anybody can say that the US, who has never looked at any inch of Georgian territory, is trying to spread the war and open a second front. And Russia, who has, in our experience, taken shares and shares of our territory, and not only of ours, but has practically invaded all of its neighbors at different times, is the one that supposedly is not responsible for anything. So this idea of the second front is one that should be radically countered. And it's a very destructive one also because it's also addressed to the occupied territories and to our citizens there and to their de facto authorities, but still they are their de facto authorities, trying to spread there some fear of what Georgia might be doing when our policy towards those territories is very clear. They are ours, they are our citizens, and what we want is to reunite those citizens. We don't want reunited territories by war. We want the united Georgia that will come from a collective decision to reunite. And that is our steady policy. Same thing with EU. These attempts to divide also focus on the EU, and there is this underlying tone that the EU reforms are not designed to help us develop and to create a stronger Georgia, a more democratic Georgia, but that it might be used to destabilize Georgia and its government. That again comes very directly, and it's very clear where it originates. And again, it's a very good case scenario of how Russia, when it doesn't directly operate through military aggression, operates through disinformation. And it's something that has to be known because in different manners, of course, Russian disinformation also is to be seen in different parts of European Union, and we have seen some manifestations of how this disinformation can affect internally the internal stability and internal policies of different countries. But the very big difference between some countries of the European Union and us is that we are outside and they are inside, and inside you are protected. We are not protected, and we have to protect ourselves, and that's a very important and central priority. So the very clear lesson of all that is just to reiterate and to do that with our citizens that are very convinced of the fact that there is no alternative to our path towards Euro-Atlantic integration. We have to support them. We have to support them from another very destructive aspect of the disinformation, one that says that there is no perspective in the country. And that is something that we are seeing these days, that we see more and more, especially young people, that want to leave the country and go to different countries of the European Union where they have this facility with the visa liberalization. So, of course, this lack of perspective, that would be very black and white to say that it's just Russian disinformation. Of course, there is the economic problems, the social problems, and the fact that they do not see enough of the dynamic in the country. But that is why we have to accelerate our reforms. That is why we have to accelerate the economic dynamic of the country. That is why we have to do more in terms of depolarization, because if there is one thing that drives the younger part of the population outside of the country is to see this endless polarization that is turned inside and doesn't show any real sense of where we are going, and doesn't bring this optimism that is needed to create really the new enthusiasm for doing and for building and for continuing on our path. So we have to, I would say, refuel our youth with this European perspective. It's one that is very clearly at hand. Nobody should be pessimistic, but we have to do a lot. And all of that depends on us. The Georgian population has shown where it stands with Ukraine, where it stands with Europe, and we who are in charge of the country, whether we are position or opposition, institution leaders, all are responsible, and we all will have to answer to this future generation about how we will have delivered at this very interesting time when suddenly history and Ukraine have offered us a new perspective, a new future, without us almost doing nothing for that at that time. And whether we will be ready for it, my guess is that we will be ready, and we will together tomorrow will be in the European Union. Thank you very much.